Welcome. Today we're going to learn how to program our Dobot using Google Blockly. In the past, we used teaching and playback. Okay, but now we're going to start using some coding here. So the first thing you want to check here is to make sure your Dobot is connected. All right, if not, go ahead and plug it in, turn it on and hit connect, and make sure the pin is highlighted here as our option. And when you're ready, go ahead and select Blockly here. So the first thing you're going to notice here on my screen is some Google Blockly code that I've already created. And you'll also notice over here in the far right bottom corner is the actual Python code. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a new file here. And I'm going to come up here to logic, or let's see here. And I'm going to drag over home here, and I'm going to hit start. And my Dobot is going to go to home position. So go ahead and home your robot first. All right, now that it's homed, I'm actually going to delete that, and I'm going to open up my desktop file here from one that I showed you here earlier. I'm going to hit open. Okay, and I want to go ahead now and show you I'm going to take the pin cap off, and I'm going to go ahead and show you my initials here using the code that I created earlier. All right. So if you come back and you look at my code here, it's mostly just a lot of X, Y, and Z move to codes or commands here. So I'm going to go ahead and delete all these. Actually, let's just get a new file here. All right. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So we're going to start from the beginning here. And let's go over here to basic. You can see your home again, some other commands. So let's see here. You can change the velocity here and the acceleration of your Dobot. But the ones we're going to be mostly interested for this assignment are motion. We're going to be doing a lot of move to, move distance, and jump to. Okay. It's important to note that when we use move to, these are absolute coordinates. All right. And when we move distance here, okay, these are relative coordinates. So I'm going to go ahead and let's get started here. Let's drag our first line of code out. Let me delete this one for now. Now let's go ahead and move, and by default it will have 200 in there. All right, and let's just drag our first line of code out, and you'll notice the Python code over here in the corner. And then let's go ahead and hit start and watch your Dobot and see what happens. Okay, so it moves to that absolute position. Obviously, we want our pin to touch the paper. So what I'm going to do now, and you should do the same, is let's change that Z value so we can move it down. Let's move it down to say, hey, minus 30, and start small and work your way up so your pin does not crash into the paper. If it does, make sure you quickly lift your robot up so you don't damage the pin. Okay, or like I said, you can leave the pin cap on until you know you're getting close here. So let's go ahead and try that, and let's go ahead and hit start and see what happens. Okay, so you notice it moved down a little bit, right? Let's go ahead and try it again. Let's try minus 40. Okay, and hit start. Move down a little more, and keep doing this basically until you are close to the paper. All right, Getting closer. I'm going to try minus 52. And it looks like that's pretty good. Let's try going up just a little bit, okay? Because you know the spring, there's a spring in the pin, so let's go back to 52. I think minus 52 is about right. So let's start. All right, so this is our absolute code now. Now, to make my J, I'm going to want to change some things, obviously. Okay, so I'm going to drag in some, go to motion, some relative coordinates here. All right, so I'm going to change these values relative to my initial absolute value up here. Okay, so well, we want to make our J. So we got to know, are we going to move it in the X, Y, or Z direction? So if you noticed, I went ahead and wrote some X, Y values on my paper. So it looks like based on my paper, we want to go in the negative X direction. So I'm going to type right here. Let's just try going. Let's type that as minus, let's try 20 and see where that takes us. Let's go ahead and hit start and see what happens. Okay, looks pretty good. All right. Now I'm going to do one other thing here. I'm going to Control C. I'm going to copy and paste this. And I'm going to put this one up here because I want to start at a location just above my J. So I'm going to change my Z value so I'm not hitting the paper. So I'm going to go minus, let's just enter 40 because we know that's above, right? So now let's go ahead and start the whole thing again and see what happens. Okay, looks good. Now let's go ahead and continue working on our J. So we're going to go ahead and grab another relative line of code here. We're going to go back to motion and we're going to drag this guy over. And now, what direction do we want to move in? We want to move in the positive Y direction. So we're going to come over here and we're going to change, whoops. Let's go over, say, 10, a value of 10. Okay. Now let's go ahead and start and see what happens. All right, looks good. Let's go ahead and finish the J. Let's go over here to motion, bring in another line of code. And we want to go up now in the positive X direction relative to our previous point. Okay, 10. Okay, now let's go ahead and see what happens here. All right, we got our first letter. So now that we have our first letter, now let's go ahead and start our second letter. And this is where it gets a little more trickier. Basically, we don't want our pen to write on the paper when it goes from the to our next or second letter of our initials. So what we're going to want now is we're going to come back over to motion and we're going to do a jump to. Okay, and this will make another line of code that tells our robot to go up and over. All right, but the thing is jump to is it's an absolute code position. Okay, it's not relative. So it's just like this first one up here. These first two, these are absolutes. So where do we want it to jump to in an absolute position? Well, let's say 10, maybe 20 over in the minus Y direction. So let's try that and see what happens. Oh, and obviously we made a mistake because we forgot to change the Z value here. The Z value was at 0, which was our home position. So we want that to be minus 52. Now let's run it again and see what happens. Looks good. That's where we want to be, right? At the beginning of our E here. Okay, now I'm going to show you one more line of code. Let's see, we have our jump to, we need set jump height. So I'm gonna put this after a jump because, well, I don't want it to go really high and for time purposes. All right, we'll just change it to 10, a little lower because it doesn't need to go too high. So we'll go one more run through our code here and let's go ahead and start and see what happens. All right, looks good. So now it's your turn to go ahead and create your own initials. Hopefully you get all 3 letters and make sure you save your work, please. If you have any questions, feel free to come ask the instructor and I'll be more than happy to help. Thanks for watching.